I know it's a pretty crazy title, but hear me out. I'm somebody who prefers to play first-person shooter games on keyboard and mouse, but I play on both inputs because I like to get insight into the way aim assist works in a given game, and also learn about the differences between controller and keyboard and mouse in the game, whether that's hit reg differences, recoil control, or in the case of this video's discussion, matchmaking times. In an ideal world, people who only want to play against other keyboard and mouse players or other controller players have a massive pool of like-minded individuals to play with. The problem with this is that the keyboard and mouse players are probably 5 to 10% max of the community compared to the majority who are on controller, whether that's on a PC or a console. Majority of players are on console, and then on top of that, majority of people on PC are playing with the controller rather than a keyboard and mouse. With the increased queue times in game, especially for keyboard and mouse, even to the extent of taking twice as long or more than it does with the controller, why do we have input-based matchmaking on by default? This is just a snub to the keyboard and mouse community. This is literally killing the keyboard and mouse player base by forcing them into a much longer waiting room between matches. This could easily be resolved by making everybody's matchmaking settings reset and go to input-based matchmaking off by default. This would literally improve the waiting time for even the controller players, but especially for the keyboard and mouse minority. I'm sure there are plenty of people who only want to play against other mouse and keyboard players, but clearly the player base is at a size where currently that's not going to give the best results in terms of matchmaking times. This leaves people with only two choices: either switch to controller or wait longer. Or a third choice, which I'm sure some have done: stop playing altogether. I see a lot of people talk about their matchmaking time on Reddit, YouTube, wherever, and people constantly respond with things like, "I get matches instantly," and it doesn't really offer any useful feedback for that person who isn't getting matches instantly. It's usually just dismissing that person's experience as if it doesn't exist because they don't have the same problems. I think everybody should be put into the same pool of players in order to improve the health of the game, especially for people who are in regions that maybe have lower population of players. I think a lot of people are having issues that they don't even know the cause of. From what I've seen, it looks to be mostly keyboard and mouse players who are having these longer loading times. If they pushed an update that literally just changed the settings to default input-based matchmaking off, hopefully without having to reset everybody's settings completely, it could really improve the feeling of the game being dead to some people in terms of having trouble finding matches. This would help especially with finding games in certain modes that are less popular, such as anything not TDM, domination, or occupy. I think in theory input-based matchmaking is good, but it shouldn't be a default. It should be something that you have to opt into, because there's more people who just don't care. They just want to hop on and play as fast as possible. So it's actually hurting the experience, especially for keyboard and mouse players, by having this on by default. There's literally thousands of controller players who don't even know that it's on by default, and they're literally inaccessible to play with by the keyboard and mouse community because of this setting. Literally, if you want to prove me wrong, plug in your controller and queue up for some games and set a timer with how long it takes. Maybe do 10 or 20 games to get an average time for the match to start, and then try the same thing on keyboard and mouse and watch how you literally take twice as long, if not 3 times as long sometimes. It's like every game has a break long enough to go and take a shit. I really think majority of the controller players are not of that mindset. Everybody on PC's a dirty cheater. You know, most people literally don't care. Most people literally don't tweak their settings or do anything. They have the most default settings. They don't change their aim assist response curve or any of that shit. All this said, I finally just got the SVD maxed out. It was definitely the least fun gun that I've used in the game so far. Probably easier to level than snipers in the current state of the game, but I don't know. Probably right now shotguns are the thing to level with the current footsteps situation. The SVD definitely feels better on controller than it does on keyboard and mouse. Like there's times even with both though, feel like you're just shooting the middle of them and you're shooting ghost bullets. It's just a not very fun gun to use in my opinion. It can be really good when you're popping off though, don't get me wrong. I feel like the marksman rifles are the biggest thing that highlights some of the hit reg problems in the game and the netcode and everything of that nature, but they just feel way better on controller because of the aim assist. It's like it locks onto their hitbox. It doesn't lock onto visuals the way that keyboard and mouse does. Controller, you can feel that aim assist slowdown. I don't mean keyboard and mouse locks onto shit. You have to aim it yourself. But there's only visual cues to go off. There's none of this like aim assist slowdown, for instance, or rotational aim assist. On keyboard and mouse, this is why things like screen shake, muzzle flash, smoke in the air, all sorts of shit can really affect your aim, whereas it doesn't really hurt controller players. I think both inputs have their ups and downsides. For instance, controller is way more consistent. You're going to track a lot more accurately. Keyboard and mouse is faster to get on target. Controller's easier to stay on target. I'll put it that way. If you were to ask me my verdict, I would have to say that controller is the superior input on this game, simply because of aim assist. Sometimes players will be behind or near cover and I can feel the slowdown and just know that they're there even though I can't visually see them. Because of this, I think from a competitive standpoint, the level of consistency that you can get with a controller is just much higher on any given day than a keyboard and mouse. You could even look at like the stats on accuracy percentages on the top Apex Legends pros, and controllers like 60-something% accuracy. The best keyboard and mouse guys are like 37% accuracy or something like that. So it's literally almost twice as consistent. That said, you can hit some way cooler looking clips on keyboard and mouse in my opinion, like especially using like an AR or something, even a sniper. Just the speed that you could hit a flick, it just looks more impressive in my opinion. You know that there's not aim assist assisting it. But I mean, that doesn't take away anything from all of the great players on controller. There's many players that put way more time into the game. It doesn't change the fact that you have to have game sense. You have to have map knowledge. You have to understand the abilities, when to use them, how to use them. You know, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just pick up a controller and you dominate. One final little piece of info I'll give you about me is on controller, I play with the Y-axis inverted. Meaning when I pull down on the stick, it looks up, and when I pull up on the stick, it looks down. Probably because of playing this game called Diddy Kong Racing when I was a kid. You would fly planes, and it would have the inverted controls, much like a yaw and yoke or whatever the thing that you steer a plane with is. You pull down to go up. So that's just the way that my brain's been wired ever since.